Hi, everybody. It's Benita here with your December forecast. So I have cast the die, I have pulled the card for the month, and I've got my book handy. You know how much I love the Publishing Goblins Oracle set. So, funnily enough, the one that ended up in the core is a hand holding a present. So we'll get to that, but I thought that was kind of cute. And let's see, we'll look first at our chaos die because that always determines certain things we need to know about the whole spread. And by the way, if you're watching now, once I finish the forecast, um, I am going to pop out, pop back in again, and do some mini readings. So anybody that would like me to pull a card for them, stick around because I'll be doing that. Or I might just keep it all on here and I'll just edit the tape afterwards. So thanks for showing up. I know I'm kind of doing this spontaneously today. And so if you come on later and you miss this, just look for whichever parts of the forecast or the mini readings resonates for you. That's what you were meant to hear today. All right. So we're going to look for the one we have. It says, flip is the simple action of flipping a die over depicted with arrows in the shape. So it says, ask you a simple action, take all the dice in its quarter and flip them. So what was hidden on the bottoms is now visible on the top. So that's interesting. It's actually sitting in the foundation section and the beyond section. So it's only got two die there. So we're going to flip them over. One of them is one of my favorites, the goblin die. So we'll get to see what that means. So that's what we do with the chaos die. Now we're going to check out the fate die because that also influences all the die that are here. So the fate die today is showing up where? It is showing up as the cards, and it's showing up in the past. We're going to see how that one plays out. Okay, a hand is a fan of 5 cards, blank and full of possibility. I'll show you what that looks like. Looks like that. And it says, it's the situation as we've come to find it, no matter who did what or what things came to pass. It is just what we have now. It asks you to take inventory of what these cards are. Chance already happened before you were dealt. Now you have finite, clear, readable things before you. So in other words, it's saying, accept your past. You can't change the past, but you can grow from it. So the fact that it's sitting in the past is just saying that. You can ruminate over it. You can say, oh, poor me, and why weren't things better? Or you can say, hey, it's what my soul chose. I do believe for a lot of us that came here to do deep spiritual work, we went through blowing off a lot of karma from past lives early in this life. So if things were rough for you from the get-go, just trust that. Just trust there's a reason for it. You can be upset, you can be angry, or you can say, okay. It's like if you read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, about his experience in the Nazi concentration camps, what he learned from that, because he was a psychologist, so he was stuck there. He might as well explore the nature of the situation and gain from that. And what he came to realize is that here's a whole lot of people all thrown in a situation that they can't help, but they had a choice over how they experienced it, over how their minds related to the situation. So that's basically what it's saying about your past. You have a choice over how you relate to it. It can be woe is me, or it can be, okay, on some level I chose that. Now, how do I gain from that? How do I learn and grow from that? Even if you can't accept that you chose it, it happened. So you can lose a lot of energy wishing the past had been different, or you can look at what's to be gained from having had those experiences. It always amazes me how some of the people who've been through the greatest tragedies, the worst situations, can come out of it having not only gained for themselves, but discovering that they have now gifts to offer others because of the wisdom that is gained from having those experiences. And it's always beneficial to look at it that way. It just affords you more energy to go, okay, what's to be learned from this? How can I use this to contribute in the world? That's always going to take you further than feeling bad about your situation and just being stuck there. Because the more you ruminate about the past and what happened and stay there, the more that's what you'll recreate going forward. Remember, whatever our mind focuses on, we get more of. So if that's where your focus is, you're just going to have more of the same. You'll attract similar people, you'll create similar scenarios, and you'll just get stuck in that vicious cycle. Okay, so the first die we're going to look at is the actions die. So let's have a look for that one. Is this it here? Nope, that's not it. There's a few that have very similar colors. This one is really interesting. It's riding the border between future and fated. In other words, it's coming up and it's probably inevitable. And what we have is a little arm wielding a sword. Okay. Hi, Sarah. Really appreciate you guys coming on this morning. I know I just kind of jumped in to do this, but I figure I had the time. I want to be as close to the beginning of the month in my forecast as possible, so I so appreciate you showing up. Let's see what that's about. Haste. Interesting. So it's haste desires speed and action. Something must happen and it must happen soon, or the opportunity for it to happen will be gone. And so it says, basically it's a situation that is we're going to feel compelled to go forward with it. And again, it's right on the border of future and fated, which means it's something we're going to feel like, well, I just have to do this. And I feel like there's no other way to approach this but to take that action. That's coming up in the future. So it could very well be a situation where you have to act quickly, and you realize at that point, it's just the best choice to make, even if it's not necessarily an easy choice. It's just gotta go ahead and do this. There's no time to think about it. It's just got to be done. Okay, so that's the actions die. We did have one dice that fell off the mat, so we're not even going to look at that one because it's not meant to show up today. All right. Next, we're going to look at the alchemist die, and today it is sitting in the past, and I'll find it's tin. So that's the symbol for tin. And tin is the wise person's metal, something that brings out the strength in other things when paired well, but on its own is not as useful. So it says it has the most clarity when it's found paired with another die. Well, it's got a whole bunch around it here. So the sense I'm getting again is that the past has literally tested your mettle, M-E-T-T-L-E, and just to recognize it as such, that the challenges of the past help to build your strength for the present and the future. So interesting, last month, we had a lot of emphasis on the past as well, but this time so far, it's saying don't dwell there. Just look at what you gain from it. So for example, when I'm working with clients who've had challenging past, I tend not to focus on what happened. I think that just reinforces the core patterns that developed as a result of the past. Instead, we look at what are the core patterns that developed? Are they helping you or hindering you? Are there things that you can do to support those patterns to become conscious so they now know they have other choices than how you felt you had to act in the past to survive whatever situation you were dealing with? So that's why it's saying now, derive the strength from the past to move forward. Don't get stuck there. All right. That's the alchemist die. A little sip of water here. I'm a little dry-throated today. Okay, so we're looking at the alley die. And today the alley die shows up in the present, and it shows up as an I. And it's all about the truth. So it's talking about how it asks you to see something just for what it is and stop placing unnecessary weight on things. I'm finding this a very, very interesting reading so far because there seems to be a real emphasis. It's as though you're preparing yourself for the new year by getting disentangled from your attachment with the past. So the truth one is saying, just look at things as they are in the present. This is where I'm at. This is where I've been brought by my path. Okay, where do I go from here? What do I do with this? It's really saying liberate your attachment from the past. Don't get stuck in woe as me. Instead, look at what have I learned? how do I take that to go forward? So that's really interesting. I love with these die how they very quickly create a very clear message. And I realize some of you are coming in after I've already read several die. So run it back to the beginning. You're going to find it really interesting to see how it's basically setting the stage to liberate our energy for 2024, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, the attentions die. And the attentions die is sitting in momentum. And I find it really interesting because it is showing an opening door or a closing door. We're going to find out which. Oh, it's closet. So this is interesting. Closets are the things in your life you can't let anybody know about, but that you also know someday have to come out and be known. It's the thing that when you're in it feels good and right and true, but when you're out of it, you see it with shame and worry behind the door. So it's saying that it's things that are still in that hidden space and that there are things that need to emerge from it. So it acts as a portal from what we keep private and hidden to what we accept as public facing and shared. So what it suggests is any unfinished business from the past, if you face it, is going to give you the momentum to move forward. I know for myself at times in my life, I have had a pattern that just puts energy out there. Here I am. And then I've afterwards had a shame pattern kick in. Oh, you said too much. You know, you should have been quieter. And hi, Maureen. Thanks for popping in. And I know where that came from. As a child, I got the message that as a female, I was supposed to be quiet and take a back seat to everything. So that protective pattern comes out as shame later on in life, going, oh, you should be quieter, you should do less, you should say less, you should stay in the background. And of course, in my work, that doesn't serve me or you very well, because if I don't show up, you don't know I'm available to you. You don't know that I have information that could support your path. So sometimes you really want to look at that. If you find yourself beating yourself up, if you find yourself shaming yourself, rather than just run the pattern and go, oh, I should pull back, I should do less, I should say less, I should be ashamed, be willing to question that pattern. Where does it come from? Is that really your inner voice, or is it your conditioning that says you should be less than who you are, or you should be different than who you were really meant to be? So that's what I see the closet as. You looking at any shame patterns that screw with your momentum, that keep you from moving forward. That's what's coming up in the near future, getting to look at that. So start now. If you find yourself second guessing yourself or putting yourself down or shaming yourself, check in. Where does that voice come from? Is that really my voice? Or is that my conditioning that goes way back to either early childhood or your first school days or whatever it is that made you play smaller than you are? Okay, so that was the attentions die. And for anybody just coming in, do catch this from the beginning. It's really interesting how the die are playing out this month. So now let's see, the autumn die. Excuse my froggy throat. Okay, this is showing up again in the past, and it is change. So it's the element of transformation. So what it's basically saying here is whatever happened in your past, again, don't get stuck in it, derive strength from it, but recognize the changes that occurred that propelled you forward. So for example, if there was a loss in your life, if a close relationship ended because you had to move, or something else happened that felt tragic, or just really harsh for you, think about, what did I learn from that? What came of that that can benefit me now? Or if I didn't grow then, how can I grow from it now? What is it that I can learn from that situation? So instead of going, I wish Grandpa hadn't died, saying, okay, when he died, what did that trigger for me? And is there still something I can learn from that maybe I didn't get to learn then because I was too young, I wasn't ready? How am I handling loss now? So that's one example. Look at how transformative change is and what was happening to you in your past. And that could be also, the end of a relationship, the end of a job, a big move, anything that felt like a big shift or loss. How does it benefit you now, and how can it if you haven't found a way up to this point? Okay, that's the autumn die. Okay, we've done the chaos die. The elements die. Okay, so today the elements die is showing up in the future. And it's showing up as this. And that is, I believe that's fire. Yes, that is fire. So it's showing up in our future. And it says, fire offers extreme energy, focus, and drive when needed, but often burns itself away before completion. So it's a difficult characterizer. It says it characterizes the dice it ends up near. And this is really interesting because it ends up near the dice we saw earlier, the arm with the sword, that was all about quick action, that was moving from future to fated. So it's saying you may find yourself triggered emotionally and just taking really quick action. And whatever you're doing there, it feels so inevitable that it might only be on the other side of it that you're able to contemplate what you did or how you reacted. But it's as though it's interesting because the closet is like looking out at the fire and the arm as if to say something you've pushed down inside. Hi, Bella. Thanks for joining me. Something that you pushed down inside is going to be so triggered, you're going to surprise yourself. It's just going to come out of you. You're going to do something. It's going to feel like it had to be done. And it might cause you to forget that you guarded that side of yourself and you let it out all of a sudden. Sometimes that's the only way we can find that we can accept a part of ourselves, is when it gets behind the wall we carefully built for it, and we discover the world doesn't come to an end when we let it out. You know, when we're kids, often it's the parental authorities that trigger that for us. We're so afraid of punishment, and we carry that forward into our adult life. We don't fully show ourselves as we are because we're afraid of that. Good morning, Dana. Thanks for joining me. So that's one of the things to think about is, you know, that something's going to happen in the near future that's going to trigger you in such a way you will forget how you've been guarding that part of yourself from the world seeing it, and you'll let it out and discover that you're an adult now and it's okay to let that side of yourself up. There's nobody judging it. There's nobody holding you down anymore. And that's some of the metal you will have developed from the strength you gained from the things you went through when you were younger to tie this all together. Okay, so we've done the fate die. Get past that. The goblin die jumped off of the table. Oh, no, it didn't. That was another die. Okay, so the goblin die shows up under beyond. So that's always a little cryptic. And it's a cog. So it's under manufacturing. And it's saying it's the creation process that we're going through. It's grimy, oily, efficient disappointment. It's the process of movement and creation of the thing from imagination and impossibility into real form. So it's interesting that it's near the chaos die, and it's one of the ones that got flipped over. The chaos die said you had to flip the dice nearest to it over. So it's basically part of the creation cycle. So again, when we get back to the fact that this is all about liberating yourself from your past, looking at what you've gained from it, remember in the present, and this is right above the present, it's about coming to the truth of things, not what we'd hoped they would be, but just to live with what they actually are, just to be clear about that. So it's just saying, just understand all of this is part of the creative process of really becoming who you were always meant to be, undoing your old programming. So even if it's uncomfortable, just accept it's part of a process that needed to occur sometime. Because let's face it, when were you planning to show up as you in this world? Are you going to wait till you're on your deathbed? That's a little late. If you really want to be effective in the world, if you really want to contribute and make a difference, you got to be you. Unabashedly, unapologetically you. And do it now. Whose permission are you waiting for? Stop worrying about whether or not other people will be happy with that. Think of it this way. If you show up as you and you lose friends, they were conditional friends. The friendship was predicated on you being who they thought you were. So if you grow and change and those friends drop away, it's because you're in different paradigms now, and that's okay. Might be sad, for sure. Grieve it and let go. Allow space for people to come into your reality that are a reflection of the person you're showing up as. But if you spend your whole life trying to please everybody else, you will never know what it is like to live in your own skin as you, as the you came into the world to be. And I do think a lot of us are born to families that plant the seeds for that growth by trying to get us to be someone we're not. And at some point, we have to question that programming. Say, who am I really? What is inside of me that wants to come out of that closet it's been hidden in and show up in this reality and say, here I am. This is who I'm meant to be. And world, you're going to accept it or you're not. And the more real you show up as in the world, the more you're going to attract real people. If you wear a mask, you're going to be with a lot of disingenuous people because you're all going to wear masks. Real people don't hang out with people who wear masks. Okay, so that's what we get for that one. I find this a really, really interesting forecast this time. Okay, so the Stitch Queen is the card that I pulled, this lovely deck of cards that I got because I joined the Kickstarter early. And it's basically influencing the entire spread. And so it says, she casts her impossible stitches through herself, her mind, her body, her soul, drawing connections and the strings of a puppet to her control. But she's tangled in the stitches at the behest of her own need for them. So it's saying she explicitly points to someone in power over the situation who demands fealty, who believes they control or should control the current situation. So what that tells me is it is the influence that you've carried your whole life. Whoever's voice is playing in your head, often from early childhood, that says, this is who you can be, do, have, and nothing else. So it's time to question that. Who has power over you? Whose tapes are still playing in your head, even if they're not a big person in your life, or maybe they are still, and you're still giving your power away to them. Really think about that. So much of this spread is about letting go of your past and only deriving from it the strengths you gained, not dwelling in it, and letting go of whoever in your past was a strong controlling influence. So you can really have the energy to show up as you with all the energy you need to create whatever you were meant to create in the world. This month is about getting out of your own way. And it's going to be a really interesting month for a lot of us, because if you're going back, say, to sit with family over Christmas, what patterns get triggered? Is this the year where instead of just running your old pattern, you actually get to show up more? You actually get to challenge that? So say you go to a family gathering and you're different because you're you, and somebody makes a comment, respond to it differently. One thing you can do is respond to it with humor. Humor says, I'm not putting you down. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just not taking your opinion seriously because it's no longer relevant to the way I'm choosing to live my life, right? When you can bring humor to a situation, you can lighten it up tremendously. You know, if you have a family member telling you how to raise your kid, you can turn that into something humorous. You know, oh, yep, he'll still be doing that when he's in college if I don't change it now. Like, you know, you can joke, you can play, blow it out of proportion so it's funny to everybody. And if that person's not laughing, find another way to interact with them that isn't about them trying to put you back in a box. Might change the subject, might ask them about something that's important to them. So that the focus goes back to them. It doesn't dwell on you. You don't have to explain. You don't have to defend. You can show up as you. And if somebody wants you to explain or defend yourself, you can just say, I'm clear that this is the right decision for me. I'm clear about how I feel about this. Period. That's all you need to say. You don't have to argue it. If they want to argue, you can just say, I don't feel the need to discuss this. Let's change the subject. Might be a little discomfort for people because you're not running your old people pleaser pattern. Good. If they're a little uncomfortable, they might start working on their stuff. They might not, but they'll learn to stop poking you. Okay. So that's now we're going to look at the influencer die, which is sitting right here in Fated. And we see this interesting smile under Fated. So it said, smile at its best speaks to people trying their best, even if what they give you is useless. It's when your friend breaks your door trying to repair it, when you never asked in the first place. The intentions are true and honest, but they don't help. It is that moment when you tell others to step back and let you handle things in your life. You don't have the time to deal with their good intentions or their consequences. So it has a pairing like other die. So where what die is behind the smile might tell you about who it is causing issues, and what die is in front might tell you about the good intentions they give you. So in this case, we have one next to it, so we'll come to that. But isn't it interesting, given what I was just talking about, when you're dealing with family, people might criticize you based on their good intentions. You don't have to give that any energy. In fact, sometimes the best thing to do is be conspicuous by the loudness of your silence. If they make a comment and it's not followed with a question, you don't actually have to respond to it. And I've found at times in my life when somebody's making a comment, they're trying to shore up their perspective, and I just look at them and say nothing, they just get uncomfortable and walk away because I'm not willing to give their ego what it wants so they feel better about what they're doing. And since they didn't ask a question, it doesn't actually beg a response from me. So often we feel like we have, because that person's asking for energy, we have to give them energy. And we don't. So, you can practice sitting, taking some deep breaths, centering yourself when you're in uncomfortable situations, and just observing and then checking in. What does my response need to be in this situation, if any? There might be no need for a response. It's amazing how quickly people will shift their pattern when it's no longer getting the energy they're used to getting from you. Just a thought. Okay, the kindness die is the one that shows up in the core today. And I find it amusing that at this time of year, it shows up as a hand-holding present. That's pretty cute. Okay, so at the core of a reading, gifted often suggests the reading itself is surrounding a situation wherein you gave someone something. This can be about the repercussions, which can be good, or it may be about the circumstances that existed beyond the gift itself. So it can be something you've graciously gifted to another. It may be the need for you to do so. It might be the thankless favor. So interesting at this time of year because there can be so much emotional attachment around giving. Did the person receive the gift in the manner that it was intended? I gave energy. Did I get energy back? Am I attached to getting energy back? Then that's not a gift. A gift is energy given, and we completely let go of receiving any energy back. Otherwise, there's a hook, right? We're trying to reel energy back. It's important for us to notice when we're giving energy and there's manipulation involved. We want something back for that energy. So it's a good time of year to really look at what are our attachments? Can we freely give energy? Can we be in a situation, even if we see somebody saying or doing something that doesn't work for us, can we simply observe with compassion that that's their stuff? Or do we get attached to it? Do we get attached to, why can't they see it this way? Why can't they do it this way? And that hook gets us pulled into drama. So we want to learn to look with compassion at somebody else's drama and not attach to it. And it doesn't mean you won't be triggered, especially if it's a close family member. But instead, try and look at your trigger. Why am I having such a strong reaction? Why is this bothering me so much? What is inside of me that I can turn toward and work through rather than try to get them to be different? Just a thought. And again, if you're just tuning in, I am going to stay on afterwards and do some mini readings. So if anybody wants me to pull a card, stick around. All right. So the longings die is the one that got kicked off the mat when I dropped the die. So we don't have to look at that one today. The majors die. This is always a pretty significant one. So let's see. That is the one showing up in Fated next to the smile. And the one that's showing up looks like this, and it's the heart. So it says it's a number of ways it can be read. So if it's upright, it often speaks to the person having more of an investment in the relationship or commitment than others. Uh, and it can be read alongside other die as wholesome, complete circle of love. So it suggests here that you may be in a situation that's fairly benign, where somebody is doing something and maybe they're trying to help, and you know they mean well. And because of your care for them, even if they're a bull at a china shop, you're just able to go, yeah, that's them. They mean well, and that's good enough. And again, it might be you're having communication and they are maybe making a joke or a comment that kind of rubs you wrong, but you know they mean well, so you're able just to slough it off. Like, yeah, okay. So I find it very interesting looking at this spread so far. It's about deriving strength from the past, not getting stuck in it, coming into recognizing the truth of a situation now. But something's going to happen in the near future that's going to cause you to bring a part of yourself out you usually hide, and it's going to act very quickly in this situation. So it seems, from what I'm seeing so far, there's going to be something spontaneous that brings out a part of yourself. But the situation you're going to be in, it's going to be an exchange of energy where it might not fully land the way you want it to, but you're maybe going to be more forgiving because you've done the work of letting go of whatever troubled you in the past about that person. And you're able just to see them now as, they're doing the best they can. And if we can have compassion for people, even the ones who rankled us in the past, we're free. We're no longer attached to the situation from the past. We can now take that energy to move forward and create the way we want to. Okay. The Mariner's die is off in history, and it is the ship. Okay, so we're going to see where that takes us. It's showing up in history. The schooner. Being close to people on your journey and letting your relationships help drive you often puts you in a particular place and role within the group, but one that you excel at when you are needed for. So what it suggests, it's showing up in history, is, again, look back on your life in terms of those deep relationships. What did you gain from it that is now serving you in your life? Again, it's about letting go of the why me, poor me stuff, and instead going, how can that serve me? What strengths have I derived? What perspectives do I have? What broader perspective do I have because of those experiences? We can actually shift to being grateful for our petty tyrants in our life, for what we learn from them, which completely takes away any power they have to hurt us, because we're coming from that place of, I've learned because of you. I've grown because of you. Therefore, I'm thankful. And because I've discovered my inner power, that person can no longer have power over me, but I have value derived from the experience. And there's no experience we can have that we can't derive value from, and perspective that we can carry forward and enrich our lives and the lives of others with. And if you haven't read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, I highly recommend it. It's a gritty read. But if somebody can go into a concentration camp and derive value from that, derive perspective from it, that not only benefited him, but benefits all of us if we read the book, it really puts our own lives in perspective. It's not to minimize anybody's pain, but it's realizing there's nothing that can happen to us that we don't have a choice about how we see it and what we learn from it. Okay. The Metamorphosis die, it's off at the other end of the mat here, under Beyond, and it shows the cocoon, or the chrysalis. Oh, it's called the egg. We're just at the egg stage here. Okay. So it says, if it's closer to without, and it's sitting right where without is, it relates to someone else entirely, an egg entering your life in the form of a new person on a new journey. So that's really interesting because it shows up under fated. And you remember how I said earlier that if you decide to actually show up as yourself in this life, some people may drop away, new people will come in. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you're willing to let people drop away who don't accept who you are as you show up more and more as your true self, If you let those people drop away, other people will step in who are a reflection of the person you're becoming. So it's showing that there's somebody out there waiting to connect with you. Maybe not consciously, but on some level, that connection is waiting for you to become enough of their reflection that they can show up in your reality. They can't until then because you haven't done enough work, shifted enough to be their reflection. So the universe rewards us for doing this deep, gritty spiritual work. It starts to put people and resources and opportunities in front of us that support the work we're doing on ourselves. I guarantee you the work is hard, but it's worth doing. And it has those kinds of benefits. Okay. The obstacles die. Where is that? Okay. That's another one that I was told to flip over by the chaos die. So it shows up as a clock. And it says yet to come. So it says, yet to come may work with other dice to clarify what is on a timetable, but it also simply adds a sense of needing patience to the situation. So interesting. The one it's sitting with is this one, which was the one that's saying there's just this process, this creative process. So it's saying through the present, be patient with the situation you're dealing with. Okay. Don't try to rush things along. There's probably going to be some sitting and some pondering. What did I learn from the past? How can I interact in the world differently now because of what I learned? And if there's a situation you're struggling with, how can I be patient and derive from the juice of it, from the marrow of it, rather than try to get past it because it's uncomfortable? You'll grow so much more if you can sit into a current situation. And if the situation is really difficult, how much can you sit with it after the fact and learn from it? Sometimes that's what we have to do too. Okay. All right. The relations die also showing up in the past. And it is just a single person. It's the self. And it's basically depicting a single human being alone. So it's neutral. It's neither good nor bad. It's just the self is working to identify nearby dice as relating to it. Self is not focused on there being a loneliness. It does speak to the self as a concept of place. So it's basically interesting because where it's showing up is right on the edge of past going into present. Again, it's you having learned everything you could learn from the past, stepping forward, that unique individual that you are because of all your experiences. And that's another way to look at the past. Even if it was really difficult, you are who you are because you had those experiences. Had you not had them, you would have been a very different person. So yes, we want to undo programming that doesn't work for us, but we also want to look at how the difficulties of the past helped bring forward elements of ourselves we might never have seen otherwise. How are we, again, benefiting from the past? Okay. The spring die shows up in the present. And she's this little goddess figure. And actually, she represents sex. So interesting, she's next to truth in the present and represents sex. It can speak to anything it's near, picking up context and clarity from other dice, as most others. So it's a difficult die face. In rare cases, it can speak to love. But it's basically saying it speaks to the queer or people in their lives feeling attraction and desire for one another. It can speak to concerns rising due to sexual encounters that should or shouldn't turn into relationships, the difficult desires. So how I see it showing up in this reading, it may very well be sexual for you. It may very well be a situation that you've been involved in where now you're having to look at the truth of the situation, what it actually is, instead of maybe what you had hoped it would be. Or you're going to need to address something that maybe you've been feeling about somebody, but you haven't said anything. And you're like, I need to have this conversation. Even if it ends up in rejection, at least I know where I stand. Might turn out to be something great. But it's saying you're going to have to get to the truth of a situation in your life where you're intimately connected to somebody in some way. And again, so much of what we're looking at in this spread is moving away from old programming and woe is me, freeing up that energy to move forward into the future and becoming more and more authentically ourselves. So it's saying in the present, in a situation where you're closely connected to somebody, you're going to have to get to the truth of the matter. But because we have the other ones influencing it, the patience one, take your time, find the right opening, be gentle with the conversation. But it's just saying, now's the time to find out where you really stand so that you have the energy to move forward. Okay. The suits die. Where is that showing up? Interesting. I wonder if that one went off the mat and I just didn't see it go, because I do not see it here. Okay. All right. I wonder if that was the alley die. Just making sure I didn't miss one here. Oh, I think I did miss the alley die. Okay. And it is actually the alley. And it shows up under fated as well. So it speaks to looking deeper to the natural experience of the situation. Alleys are intermediaries between our day-to-day and another world that lives within our own. So it's very interesting because the way the die are lined up, it has the fire with that arm, which suggests you having to take a quick action, and it takes you through that doorway into that deeper, more compassionate connection with somebody in your life who means well, but doesn't always get it right. So it's literally transcending from a situation in the past where you felt victimized to going forward, coming from strength, coming from compassion, being able to see the scenario differently. So that is pretty cool. Okay. And I do not see the majors die, so that one might have gone flipping off the table. So the summer die, let's look for that. And that one is just out on the edge under inevitable. And it shows a fist. So that's way out there under inevitable. And it's saying that it is a literal physical fight that's upcoming. Most often it speaks of figurative battles and struggles. It can be against inequality and injustice, against illness, mental illness, depression, fighting for a piece of our lives, for our jobs, often relates to verbal fights and debates. So it shows up under inevitable as like way off in the distance. So you might very well find with this situation, with this person, where you're just at a point where you can let things go and just have compassion for the situation. There may be a point where you just have to be blunt and say, we're not going there anymore. And that is actually a technique I really like to use, because when there's somebody who just likes to push your buttons, okay, if you engage, you're giving their pattern energy. Sometimes the best thing to do is just say, we're not doing that. Period. I'm not going there with you. Or that's inappropriate. Period. You cut the pattern off at the knees and you give it no energy. Do not engage. And if that person escalates, that might be a good time to say, okay, this isn't going in a good direction, so I'm going to end this conversation now and hang up the phone or leave. I hate to quote Dr. Phil, but it's true. We teach people how to treat us. So if you stay for a disrespectful interaction, and there's no consequence for that person, they don't get to grow, and you're allowing something to happen to you that you're basically disrespecting yourself by allowing that experience. Now I get it. We all have these powerful core patterns that in those scenarios just run because, that elderly family member, they just don't know better and you just have to take it. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can be the maverick in the family that just says, oh, I don't have to take it. And it's not acceptable. And finally, that person in their life might actually get a growing moment before they leave this world because somebody stood up to them. So just keep that in mind. As little energy as possible for those negative patterns. And we have the winter die, which is also in the past. And it is the moon. So it's all the phases of the moon. And it's basically saying, it's the winter die. The face that we're looking at is the moon face. Sometimes this can mean, it says winter is often viewed as the moon's domain, the moon itself being distant, cold, and more often seen as the nights grow longer. The moon is something that seems to change, but is always really the same, just lit in different ways. In this way, it often speaks of illusions, things we think are happening or we think are happening a certain way that are actually not happening or actually being totally different. In other words, it speaks to the fact that your childhood or your past, you have a certain perspective about that's influenced by all of your filters based on things that happened to you. Other people may have experienced it very differently. And that's why it's saying stop attaching to the past. It's an illusion. It's whatever you imagined it to be. And I'm not saying any hurt that came to you wasn't real, but what we hang on to is our thoughts about it, and our thoughts create our reality. So the more you're thinking about the past and thinking about the things that happened to you that you felt went wrong, the more that continues to be your reality because your reality is created by your thoughts. Okay, one more sitting in the past. I believe it's our last die. And it shows an arrow going through somebody's head. Okay. It says, calls out something that is stuck under the skin, a pain, a wound, a cruel barb from a throwaway argument that resides beneath the entirety of the situation at hand. So again, what have I been saying? It's something stuck in your craw that you're still thinking about, that's holding you back, and it's not moving you forward. And that's the important thing to remember. We often have a habit of waiting. And I have a saying, you can wait or you can create. If you are waiting for a circumstance to change, if you're waiting for somebody to be different than they are, if you're waiting for an apology that never comes, you're losing a lot of your own time and energy where you could be creating. So this is where the truth thing comes in. If you just go, I always say, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them. If they act a certain way, believe them. That's who they are. If they want to change at some point, they're going to show an opening to having a frank discussion. They're going to say something, or you're going to notice something that's going to make you go, oh, okay, there's a possibility here to actually talk about this. But if that opening doesn't show up, stop waiting for it. Move on. Work on what effect it's had on you. Work with your core patterns. Learn to become conscious and fall back in love with yourself and nurture and support the parts of you that were hurt so you can move forward with strength and compassion. Because remember, if you can have compassion for people who hurt you, they have no power over you. They didn't win. You came out with tools that they accidentally helped you create. So, or on soul level, maybe intentionally. So think of it that way. You can derive incredible strength and awareness and gifts from everything you've been through in your life. And nobody has power over you that you don't give them. So grow in compassion for yourself, grow in compassion for them, develop the skills that will help you in your life, and show up as you. Be you. Don't let anybody tell you differently. And anybody in your life that would tell you you should be someone you're not, that says more about them and their discomfort than it says about you. If you are showing up in the world and you are being the kindest person you can be, the most compassionate person you can be, and that also means kind and compassion to yourself, which means you don't tolerate situations that are cruel to you, you're doing your best. And I'm not talking about somebody just saying, hey, you might have stepped on somebody's toes there. But if you're around people who continually criticize you or try to get you to be someone you're not, ask yourself why you're hanging out with them. Is it an old pattern that reflects how you're actually talking to yourself? Okay, so that's the reading for this month. Now, anybody, and thank you everybody for showing up for this. Anybody who would like me to pull a card from my trusty deck and do a little reading for you, I would be happy to do that. So just put in the comment section that you would like me to pull a card, and I'll be happy to do so. You're welcome, Carrie. All right, anybody else that's in the room who would like a card pulled? I'm here for a few more minutes. As long as people are asking, I'll stick around for a little bit longer. Then I have presents to wrap because it's time to send off everything to the grandkids in Ontario. And I hope everybody is looking forward to a relaxing time. I am going to be away from the office for the last 2 weeks of December. Tilma and I are doing some traveling around the island. I will be taking Zoom calls in the evenings. So if you want to see me in person in the next couple of weeks, book me now. And if you think, well, I'll wait till January, start booking January now. Otherwise, you might be disappointed because people will start moving their appointments ahead. But I am going to be making myself available early in the morning, in the evenings, during the 2 weeks we're gone by Zoom. And the advantage of a Zoom session is you get a video recording. So you get to see all the cards. You get to keep that memory instead of it just being audio on your phone. And so, yeah, I do try to stay, give you some continuity. I know the holidays can be hard for people. It can bring things up. I do like to make myself available to you. So, yeah, if you go on my website, you'll see two buttons. One is for in person, and the other one is for Zoom sessions. So if you click right now, you're going to notice a lot more opportunities for Zoom sessions than you will for in person. Andy says, I always feel like there's relevant messages for each of us and all the cards that get pulled when we catch you on lives. See more. When we catch you on lives. Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate that. I definitely do try to get on here at the beginning of the month, and I will be starting a new podcast series. I also want to mention, if you go into my Facebook right now, you're going to see links to a lovely podcast I did with Laura McLeod, who's an Align coach. She's amazing. Very much appreciate the opportunity to sit down and chat with her. We did a Zoom, and she's done a beautiful podcast for it. It's on Apple, Spotify. It's called Returning to Me. And you can catch, links to it on my Facebook and on hers. So check her out. She has all kinds of wonderful guests. Well worth getting to connect with her material. And she's involved with some really interesting work with for female entrepreneurs to get them going. So do check her out. And thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas if I don't talk to you before then. Bye for now.